The honourable member from Skeena-Bulkley Valley, who has 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I too am struck by the historic nature of this moment and keenly aware of our responsibility, a sacred responsibility, to not only seek answers on behalf of Canadians, but to ensure that we are not doing undue harm to the individual who's here before us, and that we're conducting ourselves in a way that upholds the integrity, the dignity, and the credibility of this place that lies at the heart of our democracy. And I'll certainly try, Mr. Speaker, to uphold those values in my questioning. We're here because of the serious allegations and revelations surrounding the procurement and the execution of the ArriveCan app, a piece of technology that incorrectly required thousands of Canadians to quarantine, a piece of technology that cost some $60 million, and a piece of technology that was procured in a way that both the Auditor General and the Procurement Ombudsman have found was highly irregular and likely connected to misconduct on the part of the government officials who were responsible. There are two main questions of substance that I believe we were seeking answers to today. The first dealt with Mr. Firth's misleading of the committee when it came to the question of whether he had met with government officials outside of work. And the first time that that question was raised at committee, Mr. Firth replied in the negative, that he had not met with officials outside of work, and then later provided documentation that showed he had met with 3 officials at some half a dozen Ottawa restaurants and breweries. My first question, Mr. Speaker, through to Mr. Firth, is why he chose to mislead the committee in the first instance.
Mr. Firth.
Mr. Speaker, I'm fully endorsing the abolishment and understanding that there was questions that may have not been answered correctly, and understanding that some of them may have been obtuse, and that's why I'm here today, and we'll be answering all questions like I have been since the last 45 minutes, honestly and to the best of my knowledge.
The honourable member from Skeena-Bulkley Valley.
Mr. Speaker, the question as originally asked at committee was a simple yes or no question. Had the individual met with government officials outside of work? And Mr. Firth replied that no, he had not. My question, which was not provided with an answer, was why he chose in that moment to mislead the committee.
Mr. Firth.
Mr. Speaker, at that time, I didn't know how many, so rather than give a fake answer, I didn't know exactly how many people I'd met with. I've been doing this for 16 years.
Mr. Speaker, the question.
The honourable member from Skeena-Bulkley Valley.
Speaker, the question was not how many government officials or how many times. The question was a yes or no question. Had Mr. Firth met with government officials outside of work? Why did he refuse to answer that question? Why did he answer that question? Sorry, Mr. Speaker. Why did he mislead the committee by answering that question in the negative? Why?
Mr. Firth.
Mr. Speaker, at that time, I thought I did answer it correctly.
The honourable member from Skeena-Bulkley Valley.
I have a very difficult time accepting that answer and believing that answer to be the truth. The other question of substance that I believe we were here to seek an answer to is which government official, Mr. Firth, discussed the criteria for a contract that he was eventually awarded. And I believe he's provided that name as being Diane Daly. Can Mr. Firth confirm that that is indeed the government official with whom he discussed the contract criteria?
Mr. Firth.
Mr. Speaker, I can confirm that.
The honourable member from Skeena-Bulkley Valley.
Mr. Speaker, I think for Canadians watching, this is really the most troubling of the allegations, that Mr. Firth, on behalf of his company, was involved in setting the rules and the criteria for a contract, a multi-million-dollar contract that, strangely enough, his firm was eventually awarded. To most Canadians, this would look like, and I won't exaggerate, it would look like a rigged system that is designed to benefit Ottawa insiders and make it more difficult for entrepreneurs and small businesses in this country to do work for the government. Does Mr. Firth not agree?
Mr. Firth.
Mr. Speaker, the RFP, the contract that's in question, had over 220 requirements involved in there. We offered up 3 suggestions, what still PSPC deemed 40 qualified vendors could respond to, and of which 10 showed interest. So I don't see that as overly restrictive.
The honourable member from Skeena-Bulkley Valley.
Mr. Speaker, both the Auditor General and the Procurement Ombudsman found that the criteria for that contract were set in such a restrictive way that only GC Strategies could have been selected as the successful bidder. Does Mr. Firth not agree that that process is profoundly unfair?
Mr. Firth.
Mr. Speaker, I kind of find the Ombudsman's comments to be somewhat subjective after the fact. I cannot comment for why the other 39 people did not respond. People are busy, they're sometimes under the bandwidth, and also for the Auditor General to understand that we would be the only people that could respond to this. There's 635 other vendors out there with corporate requirements, and there's probably 10,000, 12,000 resources out there with technical requirements. Unless they're familiar with all of those, it's hard again to assume that we were the only people qualified to win this.
The honourable member from Skeena-Bulkley Valley.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians are deeply troubled by the allegations and revelations surrounding the ArriveCan app. Could Mr. Firth, in his own words, describe what those concerns are precisely?
Mr. Firth.
Actually, no, I don't think I can, Mr. Speaker. Being honest, I don't know the allegations and accusations around the ArriveCan app. We used the first 3 national security exemption contracts. Actually, only 2 of them, the first and the third, was used to build the ArriveCan application. So, again, not being disrespectful, either I don't understand the question, but I think I'm answering you honestly.
The honourable member from Skeena-Bulkley Valley.
At committee, Mr. Speaker, when Mr. Firth was asked about which government official he discussed contract criteria with, he refused to answer, citing the fact that the RCMP were now involved at some level in looking into the circumstances surrounding the ArriveCan app. And yet, the rules of Parliament and the laws of Canada do not accept that as a valid reason to refuse to answer a question of Parliament. Does Mr. Firth accept the fact that the rules required him at the time to provide a full answer to our questions at committee?
Mr. Firth.
Mr. Speaker, as a result of my abolishment and understanding that I do now.
The honourable member from Skeena-Bulkley Valley.
Mr. Speaker, in an internal investigation report by the company Bottler AI, there's a characterization of communication with Mr. Firth in which he is discussing the exorbitant commissions charged by his company for the work done by subcontractors. And in those communications, he is alleged to have said that it, quote, sucks for Canada, unquote. Does Mr. Firth recall making those comments?
Mr. Firth.
Mr. Speaker, I've not seen any of that content. I cannot recall saying that at all.
The honourable member from Skeena-Bulkley Valley.
Mr. Speaker, given that Mr. Firth is now brought before the bar of Parliament for only the 2nd time in our country's history, given the grave concerns of Canadians, I wonder if there's anything that he would have done differently in his initial committee appearances to avoid the situation he now finds himself in.
Mr. Firth.
Mr. Speaker, absolutely. I would have answered the questions more concisely, taken more time in giving the answers, and putting all written information back to the committee faster.
A very brief question to the honourable member from Skeena-Bulkley Valley.
Speaker, earlier, Mr. Firth said that no one has asked him to pay back the commission that he earned. I would ask that given that the Auditor General found the government overpaid for the ArriveCan app, given that the app itself didn't work and sent thousands to quarantine incorrectly, given that the Auditor General has called the record keeping around those contracts some of the worst that she has ever seen, given that 76% of the subcontractors did zero or little work, and given that GC Strategies bills itself as a recruitment firm but doesn't recruit, given all of that and the fact that Mr. Firth took $2.5 million in commission for very little work, will he give that money back?
Mr. Firth, a very brief answer, please.
Mr. Speaker, we were the 24%, we were not the 76%, and we did recruit over 50 people to work on the ArriveCan application, over 100 people in totality at CBSA, and the answer is we did as we were told. We invoiced monthly. At any time we could have been stopped. We were given $20 million and then walked away and built an app. This was not our app. We were paid to recruit and find resources who built the app within 20 days and did subsequent new releases for 18 months, and on time and on budget.
This concludes the first round of questioning.